So you often hear that overshooting your RPEs in training is going to be a bad thing. Now, pushing harder than you're supposed to go to is obviously going to build up more fatigue. But what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is that you either hit your RPEs more accurately, or you can undershoot it by going lighter than what is actually prescribed in the program. But is undershooting your RPE a bad thing? Let's talk about it. Hello, welcome back to the Strong Ambitions channel. My name is Cheung and I am a powerlifting coach. If you're new to this channel, or if you haven't already done so, please click like and subscribe to this channel so we can keep on making content to help you with your training. Now back to topic. So in this video, I'm going to try and answer these following questions. What is undershooting your RPEs? Is undershooting your RPEs a bad thing? And if it is, when is undershooting a bad thing? So is undershooting your RPEs a bad thing? So the quick answer that most people will probably say is no, it's not a bad thing. But if it was that simple, I probably wouldn't even make this video. And my answer to the question is probably going to annoy you because the answer is it depends. But what does it depend on? So it can depend on whether it is for a primary lift like the squat, bench and deadlift, or whether it's for an accessory movement, but it can also depend on how much you are undershooting as well. Now, if it is more for a main lift, then what we want to prioritize more is performance. And when it comes to performance, we want to pay a lot more attention to being able to manage fatigue. So if you undershoot short term, or if you undershoot every so often, or if you just undershoot by a very small margin by say about half an RPE, then it's probably not a big deal. Now, if you end up undershooting by quite a large margin, let's say by 1.5 or 2 RPEs, and you don't increase the weight to another set, then it's probably important to ask why. So is something not actually feeling very well? Is an old injury flaring up? Or are you scared or anxious? Or could it be that you're actually feeling a little bit burnt out by trying to attempt your prescribed RPE? So if something technical is an issue, then it's probably worth discussing with your coach about the context of your situation. But if you are feeling fear or anxiety about the weight that you're going to increase it to, you should probably feel the fear and increase the weight anyways. So you don't want to reinforce that fear of going heavy, because pushing heavy weights is the name of the game in powerlifting. So a useful thing that you can do to help get you in a more confident mindset for the weight that you're about to do is to get some spotters, if you can, to help spot and support you during the execution of that set. So as well as from a safety standpoint of being able to catch the weight if you don't have it, they can also cheer and support you when you're executing a weight. And don't be afraid to let other lifters know how you're feeling about this weight. And if you are getting other powerlifters to try and spot you, then they'll probably empathize with your situation and support you as well. If you are someone who gets stressed or anxious, then it may be the case that you need to change your level of arousal. And you ideally want to get your level of arousal to what's called a flow state for more optimal performance. So to find your flow state, it may take a bit of trial and error in order to find your optimal level of psyching up, to find what level of arousal will help you perform best when it comes to heavy weights. Now, if you are someone who needs to reduce their level of arousal, then one thing that you can do is to try and manage your breathing. You can try to consciously slow down your breathing when you're approaching the barbell. Now, what slowing down your breathing will do is that it will make your nervous system go to a slightly more parasympathetic state. Now, a parasympathetic state is basically the opposite to a fight or flight mode. A really easy way to control your breathing is to try to go for a 5-second inhale with a 10-second exhale, and you do that 3 times. If done correctly, you'll end up taking 3 breath cycles over the span of 45 seconds. Now, if you do fear overshooting, the question that you need to ask yourself is that, are you someone who overshoots often? And if the answer is no, then you should increase the weight even though there may be a slight risk of overshooting. And if you do overshoot, it's okay. You are simply learning to calibrate your sense of your own RPE scale. But if you are someone who does overshoot often, then the occasional undershooting may be helpful to help you average out the intensity over time. Now, if you are deliberately undershooting because you're feeling a little bit beaten up because the program is a little bit harder than you're able to tolerate. Now, if you do have a coach who writes a program for you and you are feeling a little bit beaten up by the program and you don't feel that you can find yourself to reach that level of intensity within your training, then it may be the case that you need to have a word with your coach to see whether the program needs to be adjusted or not. When it comes to undershooting long term, as a coach, I consider it to be undesirable, as you are going to be holding yourself back physically as well as psychologically. you won't actually know if exposing yourself to higher levels of peak intensity will actually bring about higher levels of gains. Although, on the other hand, there's probably a benefit for being able to rate your RPEs more consistently and adjusting the intensity of the prescription of the program upwards to get you to lift at that higher level of RPE. Now, let's talk about undershooting your RPEs for accessory exercises. The question is undershooting your RPEs for your accessory exercises a big deal at all? And my answer to that would be, it depends on the intention of the exercise. If it's for developing muscle hypertrophy, in my experience, most people actually undershoot their RPE than they do overshoot their RPE. Now, this often happens because most people will be performing their accessory exercises after their primary lifts when they are in a slightly more pre-exhausted or pre-fatigued state. So consequently, there becomes a loss of intention of reaching higher levels of effort to perform high levels of RPE when it comes to the accessory exercises. Anecdotally, there also seems to be this misconception that because they are accessory exercises, they're not as important as the primary exercises, and so they end up purposefully undershooting, which I think is a real big mistake. And for the purpose of hypertrophy, it is important that you do push your sets hard enough to a close enough proximity to failure. And most of the research actually supports the idea that for good hypertrophy gains, you do actually need to push your sets to a close enough proximity to failure for them to count. So for example, if you do get prescribed lat pull downs at RPE 7, it's probably important that you don't leave them to below RPE 5. So those are my thoughts on undershooting. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree, or have I missed anything out? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And I'll see you guys on the next one.